There's just a lot of confusion, there's a lot of misunderstanding, there's a lot of fear.
Do you think that this thing about reputational risk is a major factor?
The number of people that said to me, I don't want to find ourselves on the front page of the newspaper for doing the wrong thing. It's actually safer for companies not to act than it is for them to act. But basically, we need to get to a stage where you get rewarded for acting, and it's if you don't do anything that you come under attack.
Welcome to Speaking in Tons, where the brightest minds and coolest heads get together to talk about all things carbon removal. I'm Steve Kelly, I'm President and General Manager of 1.5 International, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Gabrielle Walker. Gabrielle is a renowned climate scientist and sometime polar explorer. She's the author of several books on the subject, including the hot topic, How to Tackle Global Warming and Still Keep the Lights On, and Antarctica, an intimate portrait of the world's most mysterious continent. She's also the co-founder of CUR8, an organization that is committed to creating markets for carbon removals, which is something that we're very excited about at 1.5. Gabrielle, thank you for joining us. I just wanted to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your motivations for starting CUR8 and what you see as the primary goals of the company.
Thanks. It was very intentional, actually. I've been working on climate change now for more than 30 years. I've worked in more or less every aspect of it across different sectors. I've worked in science, and media, and politics, and in the private sector across more or less every sector. And there was one point where I sort of realized I wanted to do a year of due diligence. Where can I have the biggest impact? And I did that. I give a lot of keynotes, and so I was giving that around the world, and trying to look at what are the areas of climate change where I could make the biggest difference. And the reason for doing that is that things have been getting substantially worse, and it was harder and harder to believe that what I was doing was enough. And so in the process of doing that, I discovered how big the hole was, how far we'd left it too late. I was shocked when I looked at the science and I understood how big the need for these negative emissions, for taking CO2 back out of the sky, how big the need actually was. And that was quite disturbing, but I got quite excited, I have to say, about this field, because, it's the first area, when you work on climate change for a long time, I started to experience an emotion that was really quite rare in my experience, which is hope. Because almost everything I'd done up to that point was trying to stop the problem getting worse.
Right.
And taking carbon dioxide out of the sky and keeping it out was actually a way of cleaning up our mess and giving the planet a chance to heal. And so that's why I wanted to work on carbon removals. And so at that point, I realized I wanted to make a company that could make it easy for companies to be able to navigate this, that could do the due diligence on the projects, could find the right suppliers, could put them together in a portfolio with the right kind of characteristics, could help companies navigate exactly how they talk about this, how they get internal buy-in, how they make the business model for it.
What have you learned over the process that you kind of wish you'd known at the start, if you like? Before you launch into this, what would have helped to have known?
What would have helped to know? Well, it's been an incredible learning journey, and just one thing that I sort of knew at the time, but now I'm really appreciating is that things are moving so fast in this area. I didn't know just the sheer range of brilliant, inventive genius that is being brought to this, and all the different approaches that you can take, which are solving different problems faster and faster. So I didn't know that. But I suppose also I didn't know how small the market is and how constrained it is. It's a very interesting time to be involved in carbon removals because it's right at the very beginning. And that makes it exciting, but it also makes it immensely challenging. We call ourselves at CUR8 a market maker. So we don't just act as a broker. We're looking for every possible way, deeply, deeply understand the market, and then find all the ways to accelerate it. What I know now is that people talk about the market as being demand constrained, that there's actually quite a bit of supply out there and there aren't the people buying, and that's a challenge in the carbon removal space. I don't think it's demand constrained. I think it's actually demand suppressed, because although there's more supply than demand, the amount of supply is still really tiny. And there's going to be a point where all the companies that have got a net zero target, every company that said we need to neutralise our excess emissions is going to realise that net zero means that they have to net.
But what do you think, what's the suppression? Where does the suppression come from, do
Well,
you think?
it's a great question, because I've talked to a lot of CSOs about this, I've talked to a lot of business people, but when they go to their CFOs and say, we suddenly need this big budget for this new thing, they say the first thing the CFO asks them is anyone telling us to do it? And the second thing is what's anyone else doing? And the third thing is, if we do it, will we be celebrated or will we be attacked?
On the, is anyone telling us to do it? I'm guessing that, policy and regulatory frameworks are a driver for that. How do you see that as being an important part of answering that first question for the CFO?
It's going to be absolutely crucial because, ultimately the person who can tell anyone to do this is government, right? But it takes a long time to get government to act, and we don't have that time. And so a more interesting question is, who else can tell people to do it? What are the motivations for a company to act now? Why should anyone buy now? But I think also, beyond that, is anyone telling us to do it? There's the related one, which is, what do we get if we do it? What kind of kudos? And I think there's increasingly good stories to tell around carbon removals, around why we should be doing it now, taking a leadership role, particularly in the aviation space, for example, where it's I think the aviation industry has realised that carbon removals are existential for their continued existence, given that for the foreseeable future, they're going to have to be burning fossil fuels. They need to build this industry. So what they're saying is, we are taking a leadership role. We're building the industry that we will need, and that's why we're buying now. So that's not a government saying it. That's not a voluntary rule setter saying it, but that's a sector starting to realise this is existential for us.
How well do you think people get the fact that there won't be an industry to deliver what's needed in the 2040s if we're not buying now?
It's just really funny. There's people out there, and they seem to think they have this idea that magically these carbon removals things are going to spring up out of nowhere and we can just reach for them. And that's why I think it's dangerous to think about the market as being, constrained by demand and there's loads of supply. And actually, it's minuscule, the actual amount of removals right now. If you look at the voluntary carbon market for carbon credits, 3% of that roughly is removals. All the rest of it is other kinds of credits, not that really tiny percentage of the really high quality, high durability ones. So at the moment, we're almost doing nothing. But I think one important point about that in terms of how we're growing it is just getting that message that if you want it to be available then, you need to start now. What we discovered at CUR8, over the past 2 years, prices for our suppliers have gone up about 40%. And we've modelled that we think prices are going to go up by about another 50% over the next 5 years or so. And so if you want to, it looks like a big budget, but if you want to lock in those prices now before they go up, if you want to hedge them, now's the time to do it.
Do you think that that's primarily driven by just people not estimating or forecasting, or just not being mature enough in the development of technologies that when they start implementing, there's a load of unanticipated issues that
there's cost on this price, obviously. So there's unanticipated costs, there's inflationary costs, there's not, this is first of a kind, it's not just first of a kind technology, it's first of a kind entire sector, entire industry. So there's going to be unanticipated costs. And there's also going to be 101 demand and supply price increases. Yeah. What's been happening, for example, in the lower durability, more nature-y end of the spectrum, is that prices are going up without costs going up. I think we will start getting down cost curves at some point, but prices are going to go up before they come down. Right. And I think that's a sort of argument that works for a CFO, right? Don't tell me I'm here to save the world. Tell me how I can save my money, and this is how.
So in your capacity building portfolios of credits, you're looking at multiple technologies. What would you say, what have you seen that are the most promising technologies in the spectrum?
One of the things that people always ask me when I say I work on carbon removals, and if they know anything at all about it, they say, if they don't know about it, they say, wow, I didn't know you could do that. If they do know about it, they say, do you mean nature or tech? And they also say, which one's the best? So what I say to them then, I always say this, is that I really, really am allergic to this division between nature-based and tech removals, because actually there's a whole spectrum. And I think thinking about it that way, in that binary way, takes away a whole solution space that we'd otherwise want. So we need to start now investing in the highest durability approaches like direct air capture right now to be able to get them to the scale we need. No question, we have to prove that future market. We also have to be investing now into removals that might not have such a long durability, but that can happen now, because we have tipping points that we're heading towards and we need to stop them. So I think there's a question of how you make the portfolios, and there's also a question of how you make the plan.
Right.
So the portfolios need to shift as you move along towards your date. And that's what we're working on a lot at CUR8. We're building software around how you manage future offtakes, how you manage the portfolios, how you can actually make a plan to get from here to there.
It seems to me that, you know, that whole idea of a plan that meets those principles and does that sort of conversion over time is quite a challenge to try to, first of all, get people on board with it, and then sort of get it built into company plans. What do you see as the biggest sort of challenges in advocating for climate action now?
I think there's just a lot of confusion, there's a lot of misunderstanding, there's a lot of fear.
Do you think that this thing about reputational risk is a major factor in that?
The number of people that said to me, I don't want to find ourselves on the front page of the newspaper for doing the wrong thing. One of the biggest challenges at the moment is that the way that the voluntary rule setters are approaching this, it's actually safer for companies not to act than it is for them to act. And I have conversations with many of my friends who are trying to work really hard in this area to change that. But basically, we need to get to a stage where you get rewarded for acting, and it's if you don't do anything that you come under attack. And, you shouldn't reward greenwashing, you shouldn't reward bad practice, but broadly speaking, at the moment, I think we're thinking too much about policing what happened in the past and not enough about building the solutions that we need in the future. And that's probably the biggest hamperer of this. One of the reasons that I enjoy working with 1.5 is that you're building something. You're building the solutions and have a plan already to scale when everyone else is sitting around talking about it and thinking about it. And when you start to make something, it's very different from trying to shut something down or close something down. And humans are builders, we're creators. So I think there's something about this area which is you're right at the very beginning of this incredibly exciting new set of solutions. It's like being at the beginning of the smartphones or anything like this. You're there, you can have an outsized impact, and you can see it changing and happening under your hands. And that's an exciting message.
Well, I think that's a great conclusion to the discussion, but before we finish, we like to give our guests on these spots an opportunity to speak directly to our viewers, to make any kind of closing point you would like to make. So please let us know what's burning there for you to say.
What's burning in me? So what's burning in me almost 24/7 now is how to accelerate the building of this entirely new field of carbon removals. I was shocked when I discovered the size of the hole, how much too late we'd left it to be able to deal with climate. And then I discovered this way that we can fill that hole. We could give ourselves a time machine. We could go however you want to say it, to take carbon dioxide back out of the sky and keep it out. So that's what I'm focused on. But we have to build this industry faster than we've ever built anything before. And how do we do that? We get companies to buy carbon removals now. We get them to commit now to doing it. And that's because the only way we're going to scale this at speed is if we can get money in the hands of the people with the shovels that are trying to make this happen. So the message really is companies need to be buying carbon removals now, committing to getting them now. There are good economic reasons for doing that. Prices are going up, supply is going to be limited. Secure yours now before it's too late. Compliance is coming. You can tell a great story about it, but above all, every single industry is going to need carbon removals. They're existential for every single industry, every single sector. So the story you can be telling too is that by buying now, you're contributing to building this thing, which is essential for you and essential for the world.
Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Really interesting to hear your insights.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. That's our show for today. I want to thank our guest, Gabrielle Walker, for sharing her thoughts with us. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Until the next time, let's make a difference.